Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. It's delightful to see you all here. Thank you for making your way in the rain for this really wonderful celebratory event. I'm Ann Cudd, and as the provost of the university, it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's lecture, formally marking Dr. John Wallace's appointment as the David E. Epperson Endowed Chair in the School of Social Work. We're also honored, indeed. We are also honored that Cecilia Epperson is here today. Welcome, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing in this important and moving occasion, Cecilia. Your presence means a great deal to us here, and it reminds us once more of Dean Epperson's incredible legacy, his deep dedication to Pitt and the School of Social Work, and his tireless work as a social reformer and educator. As a university, our most important contributions come through the work of our faculty. At the University of Pittsburgh, we're fortunate to have a strong faculty that regularly makes meaningful contributions to advancing knowledge and increasing understanding, creativity, and discovery. Each member of our faculty is expected to and does make these contributions. But even within this outstanding group, there are those who make exceptional contributions. They ask new questions, open new avenues of thought, and make us look at the world in new ways. For these individuals, whose accomplishments and contributions are well beyond the authoritative knowledge, stature, and service expected of a full professor, the university can recognize their contributions with appointment as chaired professor, among the highest recognitions the university can afford to a member of its faculty. John is one of these exceptional scholars, and in a few moments, Dean Betsy Farmer will go into much more detail about his accomplishments, but just briefly, in an 2018 interview with Next Pittsburgh, John stated his passion for the 3 E's, education, employment, and entrepreneurship, particularly for African American young people. He has put that passion to work over the past 3 decades, devoting his expertise to the well-being of African American children, youth, and communities through extensive service contributions as a professor, researcher, pastor, nonprofit leader, and social entrepreneur. As a result of his vast body of research, John is ranked number 5 for scholarly productivity among African American faculty at the top 25 schools of social work. His work has been funded by the National Institute on Minority Health and Health Disparities, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the Richard King Mellon Foundation, the Heinz Foundations, and the Heinz Endowments and the Pittsburgh Foundation, to name just a few. And on top of that, his fellow scholars, researchers, and practitioners at the American Academy of Social Work and Social Welfare recognize John's excellent and important work in advancing social good by inducting him as a Fellow of the Academy earlier this year. And so it's very fitting that his distinguished colleagues have recommended him for this appointment. It's our custom in the Academy to present medallions as an age-old form of recognition for those who have made exceptional scholarly contributions. They represent the high esteem in which we hold our colleagues. So now I'd like to invite Dean Farmer to join me in presenting this medallion to Dr. John Wallace as we officially recognize his appointment as the David E. Epperson Endowed Chair in the School of Social Work. Now I'm told that the Velcro only lasts so long. So we will, oh, there's no Velcro on this one. Oh, you can wear it throughout the entire, okay. Congratulations. Okay, now it's your turn. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. John gets to stand here and listen to everything we say about him. It's a wonderful afternoon. So it's wonderful to see everybody here this afternoon joining us for such a lovely Halloween. So this afternoon, I have the distinct honor of formally introducing Dr. John Wallace as the new David E. Epperson Chair. But before I introduce John, though, I want to take a minute to step back and to recognize the shoulders of giants that we're standing on to make it possible for us to be here today. As many of you know, former Dean David Epperson was the dean of the School of Social Work for 29 years, an amazingly long tenure in academia. And we're very fortunate, as Provost Cudd said, to have Cecilia Epperson with us today, whom I've gotten to know a bit over the last year that I've been here, and to learn through her and through other colleagues and collaborators in the community about the wonderful legacy that Dave Epperson had and left with us. A tradition of warm relationships, of empowering others, of effortlessly and tirelessly working to improve the situation around him, and all the fond memories I've heard from everyone in the community and in the broader Pittsburgh community about their relationships with Dean Epperson. So it seems incredibly appropriate, once we start talking about John's work, that John is the person who's going to be taking up this mantle and to be the David Epperson Chair in social work at the University of Pittsburgh. I also want to thank my direct predecessor, Dean Larry Davis. It was Dean Davis who actually had the vision and did the work to make sure that this chair came to be. And he was the one who made this a reality and who made it possible for us to be standing here today and for John to be receiving this. So I feel extremely lucky. I've been here for a little over a year now, but to pick up this mantle, taking from two long-standing deans who brought an incredible focus to the university and to Pittsburgh on issues around race, on issues around inclusion, on issues around community empowerment, development, striving towards equality and equity. And I look forward to moving that forward as the school moves forward with the help of my new David Epperson Chair. So Dr. John Wallace came to the University of Pittsburgh 15 years ago from the University of Michigan. He has academic training in sociology and a long-standing commitment to and extensive efforts to improving well-being among African American children, youth, families, and communities. And John came as a faculty member to Pitt as a returning native. And I've heard him say a million times, not a million, but more than one time, that one of the things that really drives the way that he has done his work and the passion that he brings to it is that when he came to interview as a faculty member, as an adult, obviously, 15 years ago, was the first time he had set foot on the Pitt campus. And growing up in Homewood, that shouldn't happen. You shouldn't live 3 miles from a world-class institution and not be exposed to and have access to the wonders that are there. And so I know that that has critically influenced how John pursues his work. John, as you all know, holds a primary appointment as a professor in the School of Social Work. He also has joint appointments in the Katz School of Business and the Department of Sociology and the Dietrich School of Arts and Sciences. He has a long-standing relationship with the School of Social Work's Center on Race and Social Problems, and he currently is serving there as the Senior Fellow for Research and Community Engagement. So John's work focuses on improving communities, opportunities, and outcomes. Since he started his tenure at Pitt, Anne already referenced some of the work that he's been doing, but I just want to make clear the range and the extent of overlapping projects that he's been able to bring to the Pittsburgh community and that he's been able to raise to the national level of attention. He has a very interesting dubbing of his work as the Com-University. So Communiversity all goes together to really symbolically show that intimate and intricate connection between the community and the university and the city around it, obviously, and how we make those all work together. So John has worked, he has has developed and implemented the Homewood Children's Village, Healthy Living, Healthy Learning, Pitt Assisted Community Schools Initiative, an initiative around social entrepreneurship, and they dovetail beautifully to work primarily in the Homewood neighborhood, but with broader implications for how they can improve opportunities for families, youth, and communities, and serve as models for how we might improve the world around us. As Provost Cutt already mentioned, these have been supported by a vast variety of funding sources over the years, and both federal and local, and a wide array of partners and collaborators. And along the way, many people have recognized John's contributions and work. As we mentioned, he's a fellow of the American Academy of Social Work and Social Welfare, and I was just telling him he could have his nice red and blue ribbon with his medallion that could go with that, so for extra fancy occasions, he can have 2 medallions to look very nice. He also has received in recent years the Chancellor's Award for Distinguished Public Service, the Martin Luther King Distinguished Individual Leadership Award by Coro Pittsburgh. He's been recognized by the YMCA, the Urban Affairs Association, on and on and on. I was starting to list all of the boards and things that he's involved in, and I thought that went a little long. You want to hear from John. So I have to say on a personal note that I've walked around Homewood and around Pittsburgh with John, and it's a little bit of an intimidating prospect, not to mention that you become invisible. John is a celebrity of sorts and is known by literally everybody. So in addition to his academic work and all of the wonderful work that he does here with us, he's also the senior pastor of Bible Center Church, which, if I understand correctly, was founded by his grandfather and continues to operate in Homewood. John is in every way the epitome of the best of what we can be when we truly understand what it means to be a community-engaged academic and to bring together the best of what a community offers with the best of what a university offers. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you our colleague and the David E. Epperson Chair, Dr. John Wallace.
Can't see it, but I'm turning red. I'm tremendously honored to have the opportunity to bear the name of David E. Epperson. I had an opportunity to talk to 2 women who were actually very close to him, one being Rosie Ranella, who was here actually when he got here, so she was his assistant for the entire 29 years, and so to hear her perspective on him as a leader and his kindness and the love that he had for people, tremendously honoring. And then I also had the opportunity to talk to his daughter, Sharon, and her words about her father, and she said 3 things that she learned from his priority was first was his family, second was his friendship, but he said most importantly was his faith. And so those things that we clearly share and the role that he had in this community, I'm deeply, deeply honored for the opportunity to be here. And it's also important to know that my mother and Mrs. Epperson are silver sneakers partners at the Homewood Y, so I have to behave myself lest I get in trouble and Ms. Epperson tell on me or something. So thrilled that my mom is able to be here with us today, my wife, my children, first from my church, my sister, my brother-in-law, and I better stop naming people because you forget somebody, then you get in trouble. See our doctoral students, they're being comical today. Anyway, I'm gonna stop right there. So let's get into it. I understand that I have 2 hours to speak, and so, oh no? The provost is like, no. Oh, my wife's like, no. Oh, I should be very clear. So I've been married for over 32 years. And I was talking to my wife, I'm like, so honey, what do you think I should talk about? Whatever she said very clearly in my wife way. She said, it's not your eulogy. And she just walked away. And that was all the advice she had. It's not your eulogy. So it's not my eulogy. So interesting piece that I read, if it's going to advance. There was a piece in Nets Pittsburgh, and they talked about 25 business school students, Harvard Business School students visited Pittsburgh to see if they would move here. It's kind of interesting. So the young people went to the Duquesne Club. They went to Google. They went to Duolingo. They took the Gateway Clipper and rode to a Steeler game. And it's fascinating. The thing that, of course, strikes me about these young people is the opportunities that they've had. And the question posed to young people from Harvard University, would you come to Pittsburgh, is a kind of fascinating idea. But we know that Pittsburgh, the place in which I was born and raised and the place that I love, the perspective of 25 quite fortunate, opportunity-filled young people from Harvard might be a bit different than the perspective of others. And so this picture, I took this on August 2nd, 2019, and I went to the bookstore to order books for my class. And it was interesting, the woman at the bookstore says to me, "You're not a professor, are you?" And so my response was, and maybe it was because, I do look kind of young there, and, and maybe it's the cute pink and blue or something, but "You're not a professor, are you?" And so you don't understand that I'm the David E. Epperson Endowed Chair at the University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work. Funny. But really, things like that don't bother me, and they happen more often than I'd like to, frankly, be aware of, and I call those moments. But anyway, this picture was taken in the spring of 1965, and that's my grandfather who's holding me. I was a cute baby, wasn't I? The significance of this picture, however, and some of you have heard me say this, and I'm going to continue to say it, my grandfather's father was a slave. I mean, you have to let that sink in, that his father was owned by someone, didn't have the opportunity to learn to read, couldn't own property, couldn't marry. And so the eighth wonder of the world, which we all know what is compound interest, could not work for his advantage. And he worked for U.S. Steel for 42 years in the coke ovens. And so the coke oven is literally as close to hell on earth as we can get, right? Open flame for 42 years. And he was told by his supervisor, he said, "Ralph, if you were white, I could make you a foreman. But we can't have Negroes giving white men orders here at U.S. Steel." And so for 42 years, he was unable to be promoted, worked in one of the worst jobs in probably the city, actually had black lung, but he lived to be 89 years old. He was a pastor, he was a carpenter, he was a plumber, he was a mason, he was a father, a husband, and tremendous mentor to me. And the lessons learned from his life. So when we think about microaggressions of being slighted, I'm like, you work in a bookstore, I'm a professor, whatever. Those things don't bother you when you think about it and you recognize where you come from and the people who gave and sacrificed and positioned themselves and did what they needed to do to provide opportunity for you. And so one of my most proud moments, I was graduating from the University of Michigan. And I hadn't intended to go to the graduation, but my wife's like, "Yeah, you're going to graduation." So I went to graduation, and at the reception afterwards, there was a professor that was standing in front of me, one of my white professors. My grandfather was on the other side, that's what it was. He was on the other side, so my grandfather couldn't see me. But I heard him say, "Dr. John Wallace, that's my grandson." And so in my imagination, he was seeing his father, who had been born a slave, and his grandson earning a PhD from one of the finest institutions in the country. And so I realized that what I had done and didn't want to, and those of you who have finished the dissertation, you realize it's anticlimactic, and you're like, whatever. Didn't want to go to the event, but I realized the event was not about me at all, but rather it was for my grandfather and for his father. And for my father, who had to drop out of school in 10th grade because his father had passed. And so the opportunities, and as I was preparing the talk, and it's not my eulogy, but as I was preparing the talk and thinking about the themes that run through my life, the issue really is about opportunity. And that's the word that drives and motivates my work. That's the reason I'm excited to be here in the city of Pittsburgh. And that's the reason why, silly slights about "you're not a professor." When we think about the opportunities that I've been given, that my grandfather and his father could never have, Such an inspiring and exciting thing. And so to be here at the University of Pittsburgh, one of the finest institutions in the country, and the reason I left the University of Michigan to come here was because of the school that Dr. David Epperson had built that had a reputation of being engaged and transformative in community. And so to have the opportunity to be here to talk is just beyond imagination. So while I was actually in a meeting, this was, the date's on there, September 19th, I got a text from a colleague of mine, the dean of the School of Public Health at Tulane. And he texted me this story. Pittsburgh is the worst city in America for black people. How can it be? And you see his note. What's going on? And I hadn't seen the story, so I'm a little disturbed, alerted, or whatever. So I went and read the story. And I'm sure many of us are aware of the report that came out recently. But the data are not inconsistent with that conclusion. So this is the city of Pittsburgh, or the Pittsburgh region. And what you see there, that sort of large middle piece that's predominantly black, this is a map of the city, and it basically shows us our racial residential segregation. And the areas that are black because they're black. And the areas that are white because they're white. And so we have a hyper-segregation in our region. And if you'll notice kind of the pattern, so then this is a similar map, and it's showing illegal dump sites in the region. And what you'll notice is those areas that are predominantly African-American are also the areas that are disproportionately plagued with illegal dump sites. This map shows the percent African-American by percent poverty. And what's interesting, there's only one African-American neighborhood in the city of Pittsburgh that is not predominantly poor. Anybody know what it is? Many of you don't even know what that neighborhood is, and I certainly haven't been there. Anybody know? Nobody knows off the top of their head. It's interesting. Chartier City on the West End. Anybody even know where? Right, we don't cross bridges and all that stuff. You don't even know where Chartier City is. But so that's the reality of the city of Pittsburgh. And then real quick, so you look at the education level by race in the city. Everybody graduates high school more or less kind of, which is great. But if you look at the data, our white and Hispanic populations, both graduation rates around 47%. This is college graduation. The Asian population is 79%. And Pittsburgh's African-American population, only 17% of African-Americans have earned a bachelor's degree. Of course, that has implications for income because, as we know, the more you learn, the more you earn. And so Pittsburgh's white population median home income is about $51,000. For African Americans, it's roughly half of that at $26,000. And so, what about that? So the University of Pittsburgh, the intersection of our research, teaching, and services, fundamentally, as I reflect upon it, is about opportunity and creating opportunity in this resource-rich community, this resource-rich university, and to make Pittsburgh most livable for all. So I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Homewood neighborhood, Pittsburgh's best neighborhood, by the way. And this is the cover of Bridges magazine. It says the School of Social Work teams up with Homewood to reclaim the community for children. And so really launched the beginning of this work. Now this is a friend of mine. This is back when she had long hair, I had black hair. And this is dated July 15, 2005. Congratulations on behalf of the Board of Directors of Operation Better Block and the residents of Homewood, Brushing community. It's an honor to officially welcome you as a newly unanimously elected board member to the agency, Operation Better Block. Board, this is the funny part. Board terms in accordance with enclosed agency bylaws are for 3 years. Now, and Aaliyah's, by the book kind of person. Meanwhile, she left the organization, and I'm still there as the board president, like 15 years later. Thanks, Aaliyah, appreciate you. Aaliyah is now, I'm super proud of her, and she's now a faculty member here at the University of Pittsburgh, so much love to her. But we started this journey together in around 2005. We discovered this thing called community pride. At that time, Operation Better Block, our primary bread and butter was community organizing, a little bit of community development, and we really focused on that work, and we decided we were not being as impactful as we should be. And in fact, our mantra was go big or go home. So we were going to close the organization down, or we were going to make impact. And so we discovered this program called Community Pride. It was community organizing work in Central Harlem. And attached to it, as we did our homework, was this entity called the Harlem Children's Zone. And a group of us went to Harlem in, I believe it was 2009, and learned more about the organization. Us and Jeff Canada, he invited us to actually come back and speak, and we became enamored about the idea of doing for poor children what middle class and upper middle class parents do for their children naturally. And the fact that he was doing in Central Harlem with all of the challenges that we think about here in Homewood in spades, right? 13,000 kids every year. The children are going to kindergarten ready in Spanish, French, and English, right? Hundreds of children graduating from high school, and all of the issues, single-parent households, drugs, and all of the things, violence, all the things that we talk about, we're concerned about, and we use often, unfortunately, I think, as excuses to explain why poor black children can't learn. They address those things head on. Is it an expensive venture? Absolutely. But premature mortality is expensive. Bearing babies is expensive. Incarcerating people for 20, 30, 40, 50 years is expensive. And so when we think about the cost of human life, particularly when we're talking about hundreds and thousands of people, it has huge, huge implications for our work. And so we decided that we should be able to do for the 2,200 children in Homewood what they're able to do for 14, 15,000 children in Central Harlem. I mean, you think about it. This is the campus that cured polio. This is the place where we literally can take people's organs out, replace them, and people live. Replace body parts. We can't teach children how to read. I refuse to believe that. And so the work to which we've really dedicated ourselves over this last 15 years is about providing opportunity for children. So I have a lot of stuff to talk about. I want to be sensitive to time. What time do I need to be done? What time do I need to be done, baby? 6 o'clock? I got till 6 o'clock? All right, good. 5 would be good? All right, I got 30 minutes. I got to go. All right, so put your seatbelt on. Let's go. So the Homewood Children's Village is a place-based, child-centered, comprehensive community initiative inspired by Jeff Canada's work in Central Harlem. Our mission is to improve the lives of children, and we weave the fabric of the community in which they live. Children live in homes, they live in neighborhoods, and so you cannot take children out of their homes and think that you're going to transform life for them when they're hearing gunshots at night. And there's research that shows that that adversely impacts kids' grades and their test scores and so forth. When they don't have food to eat, when they're cold, when they're walking in weather that most of us would transport our children. And so those things matter. And our vision is a place where every child succeeds. And so this is just kind of a broad sense of the pipeline, cradle to college to career. I won't spend too much time on it. Obviously, Central Harlem, Jeff Canada's business organization has about $130 million they work with each year. We don't have that kind of money, but we don't have the magnitude of the need as well. And so we do collaboratively what he's able to do individually. As a part of that work, we launched the Chris Fellows, so social work students actually have served in those schools since around 2008-10, so forwarding. The opportunity for our students to both learn and to give, right? And so this integration of the research, the teaching, the service, that's sort of the broad theme of our work. We have been able to move the needle on some of that work, so full-service community schools actually bring resources, not just of the university, but also the community to the schools. And we see that our schools, despite being among the lowest performing in the state of Pennsylvania, we have seen positive movement, and we see the heading of this one newspaper called School Step Up Social Services in Hope of Improving Education. So this is one of our social work interns serving there, and we've been able to move those schools forward. Now, it's an ongoing battle. It's not done. The work continues, but the point is movement can happen when there's collaboration, when there's significant effort and significant investment and resources. And our foundation community here in Pittsburgh has been tremendously helpful in moving forward that agenda. We also learned that one of the big challenges for our kids was attendance, and why is that? Well, we come to find out that the issue of asthma, and Pittsburgh is the 16th most challenging place to live with asthma. We found out as absenteeism in our schools was relatively high. And so compared to the United States, where the asthma rate's about 9%, it's about 14% for African Americans in the nation, and here in Homewood it's about 20%. And so literally 1 in 5 of our children, and those are who actually have formal diagnoses, so we don't even know the actual number of kids who have asthma undiagnosed. And so we launched a funded project from NIH looking at this issue of asthma and addressing those disparities. So the project is called Healthy Living, Healthy Learning, Healthy Lives. Did a significant amount of work about identifying from the children and their families, again, community-based, participatory, engaged work, what are the issues that cause asthma in their lives. We found out a lot of young people, there are folks who smoke in their houses, and again, the role of stress and just the challenges that go with that, and poor folks smoke. Unfortunately, here in the city of Pittsburgh, everybody smokes. I was shocked, actually, when you return the level of smoking. I see those of you not from here, like, what in the world, right? So smoking is a very real situation. So imagine a child living in a household in which everyone smokes. It's very difficult to deal with that work. We also train young people. So we have these young people who are trained, and they're holding their certifications, their IRB certification, because those young people have gone through Pitt certification to be IRB trained, and we train these young people, and they create interventions. They do air quality, leaf assessments around them, and so forth. And so equipping and providing our young people opportunities that they would otherwise never have through the work that we do here at the university. And so we partnered with Pitt, the unions, the school board. We actually created a new MSW Certificate in Advanced Study of Teaching program, which is unique in the nation to our knowledge. And so marshaling the resources of the institution, collaborating with the community to intervene and to give our children opportunities that they otherwise will not have. One of the first projects we did was the 1,000 Conversation campaign. So literally 1,003 conversations with Homewood residents, talking about what are the challenges, what are your concerns in Homewood, and what are the needs. And so what that conversation yielded, 50% of the concern was crime, 27% was around the issues of vacant, abandoned buildings, and in qualitative follow-up, we found out that those two issues intersected. And so the prevalence of vacant and abandoned properties and the resultant violence associated with it was the key issue that residents raised. And so we literally then assessed properties, and so Homewood we have data on literally every parcel in Homewood, the condition of the neighborhood, the sidewalks, the housing stock, and everything. And so that ended up with this map. We focused on the areas around schools because children have to walk to and through, and so those things, again, we take for granted as adults. We're driving and jumping on the bus. Kids literally are walking past these properties. And we have a situation in which, with one of our adults, as the assessment was going on, a gentleman was trying to entice a young woman to come into a building that was open to entry. Huge problem. So we identified the properties that were in the worst condition. We called them the dirty 30. So vacant, abandoned, open to entry, which of course creates a space of danger for young people. So we tracked the results, and what we found was this is an example of the properties. And in a 30-day period, these issues were addressed. And so what we did was we simply gave those properties to residents, and we bombarded the 311 line from the city and called over and over and over and over again. And in literally that period of 30 days, 23 of those properties were addressed. And the residents had a tremendous win on properties that had been problems for them literally for years. And a simple little intervention in partnership with our students, design the intervention, do the analysis, give the results back to the community, and then the ability to impact change in spaces and places where people thought things couldn't be done. Then, we write about stuff too. Safe route to schools, our kids walk to school. We did a conversation with them. Well, what does it mean? What are your concerns? And so literally they map the routes that they walk. And so you have I'm colorblind, so if I get the colors wrong, don't worry about it. But it's like the green, the red, and I think there's yellow. And so literally kids going around blocks that they perceive to be unsafe on their ways to school. And so this is interesting. So this property is boarded up. You see the little police sign on the front. And so the kids are like, yeah, let me tell you how this works. They sell drugs here. This is how they do it. People say in the back door. So you board up a house, you board up the front door, you leave the back door open. What did you do? And the children are fully and completely aware. And so the idea was to intervene. And so we actually worked with the Urban Redevelopment Authority, had those properties around the schools that were most dangerous demolished. Work with Operation Better Block to design. We have this cluster plan, and again, our students involved, our The University Center for Social Open Research, our work on the Pittsburgh Neighborhood Community Information System, and so developed this methodology where Operation Better Block has divided the neighborhood into 9 districts, the 10th being the business district, and literally in these clusters of blocks, working with residents to determine their aspirations, their desires, their designs, and the concerns that they have. And so now the land use plan for Homewood that has officially been sent to the city and acknowledged by the city was done by Operation Better Block with support of the University of Pittsburgh and our students and our children. When I came back to Pittsburgh, the first piece I published was on holistic faith-based development, and it just talks about the role of congregations in community transformation. As many of you know, in black communities, churches remain repositories of human, social, and economic capital. And so wrote about that work. This is our church's t-shirt. The church has left the building. We call our community and economic development work the Oasis Project. My wife oversees that work. We have 4 foci: education, employment, entrepreneurship, and the built environment, or what I call with gentrification. So rather than gentrification, it's the role of the community in the transformation of neighborhoods. And so, again, my wife oversees this work. We have 6 large business pieces to that. The Makers Clubhouse, which is our after-school program at Faison and Lincoln. We serve 100 kids every day, 6 weeks in the summer. Oasis Farm and Fishery, I'll talk about the relationship of that to our work, to our research. Everyday Cafe, which many of you have been to, and by the way, make Everyday Cafe your everyday cafe. And we do take, what's it called, Panther funds? That will be honored there, so feel free to join us there. Oasis Transportation, Oasis Property Management and Maintenance, and most recently Own Our Own Entrepreneurship Development Center. And our vision is simply that 15208, our zip code, the opportunities and the outcomes in our zip code equal, and frankly, my desire would be exceed the opportunities and outcomes in our area code. So that work actually, particularly our work in the school, began with this young woman, Carrie Clauser, who was a graduate of the MSW program. She was in my community-based participatory research class in 2009. And we talked about the power and the influence of young people to be able to change neighborhoods. And shortly after my grandmother had passed, she left her home to our church. And she said, I want you to use the home for the community. And so this young lady, graduate of the program, she and her husband said, you know what, we want to live in the neighborhood, we want to impact this community. And so they literally moved into my grandparents' home, and 3 of the young people that they're sitting with are also University of Pittsburgh graduates. At that time, they were students. And among them, they started our after-school program at Faison. So 2 days a week, a whole bunch of kids, volunteer. And that program now, called the Makers Clubhouse, serves 100 kids a day, funded by the Richard King Mellon Foundation, funded by the Allegheny Department of Human Services, probably about 3 or 4 full-time employees, another 10 or 12 part-time employees. And we are literally every day teaching young people and giving them an opportunity to understand science, technology, engineering, art, and math. Our research revealed that because of No Child Left Behind, which is the federal education policy, our kids were getting essentially double reading, double math, very little science. As you know, science is the integration of reading and math. And so what happens when young people don't get science, the research tells us that 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, people become scientists. It happens at 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Our kids are not getting science, 9 weeks of science, 3rd, 4th, and 3rd grade. What happens? You fast forward to Westinghouse, which several years, and I think maybe even now, don't have a science teacher. And then we're blown away. And we talk about, we don't understand why black kids don't do science. But the absence of opportunity. And so again, the issue of opportunity. And so we have an after-school program every day, robotics, Dream STEAM, which is full-day science work. Dream STEAM is our events, community-based events, so off days, so like the Martin Luther King holiday or whatever, we transform our sanctuary, we take out the chairs, and we bring in folks from Citizen Science Lab, the University of Pittsburgh School of Engineering, Carnegie Mellon University, to teach and expose our kids to science, hands-on work, better food, better meat. We grow food, and did you know that many of our children did not know that food does not come primarily from Giant Eagle, but it comes from the ground? And so the opportunity for young people in Homewood to be able to grow food, and if they grow it, they'll eat it. Amazing. Brussels sprouts, asparagus, carrots, craziest thing in the world. They grow it, cook it, they'll eat it. The social skills group, we find that some of our children come to school unavailable to learn. The stress and challenges of poverty, having a parent who was incarcerated, arrested the other evening. That's real. had a kid, this was Aaliyah and I were meeting with Scott Izzo at the YMCA years ago. And I remember waiting at the bottom of the steps, and it was during the summer camp. And the kids were there playing. And the counselor for the summer camp says, okay, everybody get in line. This little boy about 4 or 5 years old, he says, are we going to jail? So you tell a 4-year-old black boy in Homewood to get in line, and the question that comes out of his mouth is, are we going to jail? That's unconscionable for us as a city. And so as a university, with all of the opportunities that we have, and again, that's what, 2-3 miles from here. I was 39 years old the first time I set foot in the Cathedral. 39. And so that's frankly why I'm so proud of the university, and I'll talk more about the work that's going on. Let me keep moving. And many of our staff are students at the University of Pittsburgh. There's one young man, Jalen is our engineering kid. I just bumped into him on the way to the talk. Unbelievable. And so our babies, our Pitt babies, are working with our babies in the community. It's interesting. So the research tells us third places like coffee shops and cafes induce efficacious neighborhood control and social action. That's sociology speak for eyes on the street, people spending time working together, sitting together lying and all those things that people do, and just gossiping and things that make neighborhoods, not strangerhoods, but neighborhoods. And so this research behind this informed our inspiration and idea for the creation of a third space for Homewood. And so this is a Pitt News article. Pitt Prof Tests Theory with a Latte, this book by Ray Oldenburg on the Great Good Place. This talks about the significance of third spaces and places for people to just be. And so the thought behind this idea was that we can actually catalyze economic development on the business thoroughfare, connecting the weak market, economic market of Homewood to the strong markets of North Point Breeze, and create a space where people can meet and be and see and be seen and just break bread and the things that are normal and regular neighborhoods. And so that idea became reality. So we did a facadectomy. That was a little bit funny. On this, which was originally the Homewood Post Office, more recently was a church. That's the inside of the thing. That's the space. And huge part of that is equipping and preparing young people for work. And we take it for granted. Again, those of us who've had an opportunity to live places where stores and stuff are normal, but literally most of the stores in Homewood are mom and pop situations, so young people don't have places and spaces to work. And so it's much beyond just getting a cup of coffee or flatbread or whatever, but literally providing A, hope, B, economic development, but a place for young people to have that first job, because you can't get a job because you don't have experience. You can't get experience because you don't have a job. And this cycle. And so much more than a place for the normal stuff that we think about catching some Wi-Fi. You literally have a place that, while certainly not revenue neutral, still quite expensive, but produces revenue, creates jobs, provides a place that even when the university folks come and want to meet, there's a normal place other than a church basement, the Wise conference room, a normal public space for people to meet. And of course, we engaged our students. So the CBA students helped us with the marketing for the work. And so we have classes of students who come in and we work with them and teach them, and they teach us, and we have an opportunity to develop and grow together as a community in partnership with our university. This picture disturbs me in some ways. My daughter runs this little program called PAC. They have anyway, it's a wonderful little program. But anyway, she put the stole on the kid. This is a Westinghouse graduate, right? And so it looks like this PAC thing is big, man. And meanwhile, we're working hard, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars working with kids, and she gets all the credit. This is like on the website for Pittsburgh Public Schools. But beyond my haterade, more importantly, this young woman is a graduate of high school, but she's also a barista at Everyday Cafe. And so she's walking across the stage, but she also has a resume. And that's powerful. This is a vacant lot, overgrown. Bible Center purchased that lot. And so had an introduction into a guy named John Camillus and another guy named Bopaya Badanda, faculty members here at the university. And they had this crazy idea about DC power and the theory that you can put buildings off the grid and power them by the sun, and you can create jobs. And the concept is the business of humanity. And so this idea was we're going to do this solar-powered greenhouse in Homewood, and we want to see the solar power work. And can we literally become the hub for solar? And so I'm like, sure, whatever. I got some land. Let's figure something out. And so that crazy idea is now Oasis Farm and Fishery and the Business of Humanities Off-Grid Laboratory. There's my alarm going. I said it myself. Going off. And that vacant abandoned lot is now this. And so the neighborhood is beautified. Our children get an opportunity to learn. We have an engine that is actually being used in this article from the Post, Indian Homewood growing is testing ground for Pitt's business of humanity. The idea that you can use DC power, create businesses. And so the partner project that we have in India is people who didn't have power. We're talking about basic electricity stuff, women going out to relieve themselves, having to go in groups because of the dangers of being molested. And now they have lights. The ability to, on an iPad, to talk to a doctor thousands of miles away, right? Water, education, the ability to study and learn. And so this international relationship, Homewood, India, and the beautiful part for me is our college students are learning, so we're doing, in one of the garages that we own, doing vertical growing, and the question is, no light. Can you change the flavor profile of vegetables by changing the light? That's a crazy idea. It's interesting, but hey, it's fine. And more importantly for me, our babies are learning about what is a bioshelter, right? We took our kids on a field trip, and this guy's like, hey, do you guys know what a rain barrel is? I'm like, listen, man, we're from Homewood. Do you know what a bioshelter is? Pitt Assisted Communities and Schools. This is some more recent work. We started this in 2015. And so working with college and high school, we now have 3 classes in Westinghouse. Our students are dually enrolled. My colleague and friend, Dr. Osai, who I tell, she doesn't like me to say it, but she was my student when she was an undergraduate at the University of Michigan. And now she's an illustrious professor here at Pitt and lives in Homewood. I'm so proud of her, I just want to cry. But pioneers at work in Homewood. So now our babies can graduate from Westinghouse with 9 credits and a transcript from the University of Pittsburgh. And so many of our kids are told you're not college material. You can't debate a transcript from the University of Pittsburgh. And so that opportunity in that school, Justice Scholars is what we call, we have an introduction to social work. So actually the first social work class that was in Westinghouse and the first social work class with college and high school. And so our young people, now we have young people in college. 6 years ago, only 6% of the kids from Westinghouse went to college. And within 6 years, only 6 of them had a degree. We have more than 6 kids in college now from our first class, and the expectation is that they will graduate. And there's ongoing support and staying in touch and all of that. But the point is, young people from Homewood with proper support and given opportunity can learn and succeed. Another program we have is called Purposeful Pathways. When our kids are actually exposed to drones, when our kids in our CTE, Career and Technical Education, get to go up to the Weiser Center and see a baby being born out of a robot, things that doctors, medical students get to see, that they get to see at 10, 12 years old, how does that change the trajectory of a young person's life when they realize all that is possible less than 3 miles away from their home? The cutting of the ribbon at the Manufacturing Assistance Center. Again, literally thousands of jobs available in manufacturing, nobody able to do this work. Bopai and I were in a meeting out in Harmerville, and the conversation was we need to close this thing. So the MAC was out in Harmerville, and Bopai was like, yeah, we got to let it go. The building's bad. I said, wait a minute. Whoa, let's not be hasty. Why not move this to Homewood? And so here we have the ribbon cutting. That space is in Homewood, and the MAC provides training in Homewood and 95% job placement. And people are starting work at $15, $18 an hour, livable wages, because the University of Pittsburgh has moved the space to train people without regard to their criminal record and so forth as skilled employees. Now, this was a story that, sort of sad, and one of those things that is a challenge for Homewood is the issue of violence. We get it. And so the newspaper story said a fatal shooting left 2 people dead in this illegal club on Homewood Avenue. And these 2 buildings were for sale. And there was an effort actually to put a motorcycle club in one of those. And so our church bought those 2 spaces largely defensively to protect the business district in Homewood. knowing that if you have a motorcycle club on the business district, it's a wrap. So this building, this is a funny story, but not really. So our computer had gotten stolen from our church. And these things happen. If you do urban ministry stuff, you don't worry about it. These things happen, it's normal, right? And so I'm walking down the street one day, and I see this computer, and the computer looks out a little familiar. I was like, hey, man, that's nice computer. Does it work? He's like, yeah, it works. I said, plug it in for me. So he plugs the thing in, and it says Bible Center Church. I'm like, really, bruh? So I called the police. I said, hey, there's about to be a homicide on Homewood Avenue, so I need you to come. And so actually the police commander was a member of the church, so it's funny, but not. But the exciting part is I heard our senior vice chancellor, and she's talking about this partnership thing and community engagement. And so I said, listen, and her intent was to start in the Hill District, and I get that. That's contiguous to the university. She lives in the Hill District. We weren't going to point that part out. But I said, listen, just so happens I have some buildings that could be immediately engaged. And so rather than a strategy is focused on the Hill District, I really think we should look at a dual strategy with Homewood, kind of being the pilot for the Hill District. And so Paul came out, and we met and talked and looked at different buildings and said, hey, it's available. And so the work began, and like magic, a 10,000 square foot building, which was an eyesore and a challenge to our neighborhood, has become the community engagement center, or low key we call Wakanda. That was funny, y'all didn't get it. All right. Community Engagement Center, that's the grand opening. And I got a letter from the chancellor. Dear John, on behalf of the extended Pitt community, thank you for your leadership and expertise as we ushered at our Community Engagement Center in Homewood from concept to reality. We're proud to follow the example you've set and the strong foundation you've laid. And so that was, and again, I usually don't keep stuff. I literally don't even know where my diplomas are. But the appreciation and the opportunity that the university has afforded me, and now this work is going to be on steroids, so I can almost sit back and watch and be amazed and confirm that I made the right decision when I left the University of Michigan to come to the University of Pittsburgh, an institution that literally is transforming communities. Where else does the dean of the School of Education sit on the floor with little black children and read a book? Where else can that happen? Unbelievable. And so stuff like this, you talk about opportunity. I didn't know a dean of nothing. What is a dean? And so for kids 2, 3, 4, 5 years old to be in Homewood, sitting on the floor being read to by the dean of the University of Pittsburgh School of Education, unbelievable. Hundreds of our kids from Pitt serves, now in the community serving. This is Johnny, what's Johnny's last name? Coleman. Johnny's a businessman. He's been doing drywall for forever. And so I shot this picture 3 days ago. He's standing outside, just walking down the street, and I'm just walking down the street, and he has his binder from the Power to Prosper program through the Institute of Entrepreneurial Excellence, and he's been hustling for a minute. But to be in that space and to literally be able to take his business to a whole new level, because the University of Pittsburgh Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence is literally down the street, makes me proud. This young man, so is Phil here? I think I saw him. Is Phil? So Phil and Phil's amazing. So we always have, we're oversubscribed. He brings in all of these students. And I said to Phil, Phil, I'm not impressed with you. I said, Phil, you haven't, I said, 2 challenges. You haven't brought in anybody from Homewood, and you haven't brought in any Native American students. So until you do that, I'm not all that impressed. Well, Phil met half of the challenge. So this young man, Aaron Thomas, who we just hired at PAX, is a Homewood resident, BSW from, associate's degree in social work from CCAC. And now he's in our BSW program. And he's doing social media for us and whatnot. Unbelievable. And so this kid represents what I wanted for myself. That he's now a student at the University of Pittsburgh. Homewood kid working right on Homewood Avenue. Unbelievable. Terrence Hayes. Terrence Hayes is a MacArthur Award winner. And he's in Homewood talking about poetry or whatever it is. Amazing. Our students are dispersed around the community in service learning work as community assistants. So many of the nonprofits have Pitt students working with them around website, communications. Love this stuff. Homewood teens research the photo history of their neighborhood. So our kids need to know that Homewood is not today's Homewood, but there's a rich history. It didn't begin with violence and drugs and crime. So the impact, 41 ongoing programs across education and youth, family and economic support, health and wellness, cultural arts, capacity building, 667 events. This isn't just 1 year. 4,581 community members served. 40% minority and women-owned business participation. Our city is probably around 6, 7, 10% at best. 40%. 209 meetings between faculty and community leaders, talking with our community leaders about what does Homewood need. Listening to people, what a concept. Thrilled, Darren is here, Lena's here, and the work that the center has done in less than a year. So literally, Pitt has a campus on Homewood Avenue. 166 meetings with faculty members and residents. Think about it. I didn't know any university professors until I went to college. And so our community folks know these professors first name basis. Unbelievable. 30-plus schools and departments participating in the program. Had a crazy idea in 2017, how to plan a business hub. And so we worked with the EMBA students, executive management, MBA students, talking about what it would look like. And so now this building next to the CEC, we were like, we want to put a business incubator there. We want to build business. This is last week, there's a crane on Homewood Avenue. That by itself is just applause. There's a crane on Homewood Avenue. And that space on our own is being built out as we speak. I work here at the University of Opportunity. That's a cool picture I took too, right? Thank you. What questions do you have?
Yeah, we have time for some questions.
What questions do you have? Please. What's next? Well, it's not my eulogy. So what's next? I got so many things. We have a space that we want, this next to Phase On, that we want to develop into a full-day science center for young people. Because our kids again, we're working with folks in engineering and computer science and so forth. So for those kids to be able to do that stuff all day long, and like science, you can't like finish a project. So the problem is we do this stuff and you got to pull it up every day. Think about that. So the idea is, and then for our students, the idea would be that our Westinghouse students mentor and tutor the younger students. And then I would love for us to have an initiative with Bradford to become essentially a pipeline from Westinghouse to Bradford. The truth of the matter is, at least today, many of our kids are not ready for Pitt, Maine. It's just real. But the Bradford campus, 40% of the kids are Pell eligible, 40% low income. And most recently, I don't know if it's still the case, but the president of the campus was an African American. The students are deeply engaged there. And it's almost like a small high school where, the art in the building is done by the students. The television station, the radio is done by the young people. And so I think that's an amazing space that if we can develop a pipeline from Westinghouse to Bradford, I would love to see that happen. And on, but I'll take another question. We good? Everybody happy? I do a good job, Mommy? Thank you so much for your time.